Tensa, my name is Kimberly Valentine, and I'm from a northern reservation called Opaskwayak Cree Nation. I grew up in an isolated part of our community called Umberville, which is a Métis settlement. I was raised by my late maternal grandparents, Flora and Malcolm Crane. Indigenous communities face challenges such as racism, poverty, intergenerational trauma, and other social issues. When I was 4 years old, I shared with my grandfather, Malcolm, who I was very close to, that I wanted to become a pilot when I was older. I remember looking up at the sky and would watch planes descend on a daily basis. I found out later that we lived by Mississippi Airport, which is now owned by Matthias Cologne Cree Nation, also known as Pakitawagan. Growing up, my grandfather encouraged me to pursue my dream in education. I made a promise to both my grandparents that I would finish high school for them. In 2004, I graduated from high school at Margaret Barber Collegiate Institute. Shortly after, my grandfather passed away from lung cancer. And that was a very difficult time for my family and I. I then started the process of applying for funding from my band. And most people do not know that the waiting list to get band funding to attend post-secondary school is quite long. So despite the waiting to get funding, I never forgot about my dream of becoming a pilot and completing my education. So about 10 years ago, I left Nepal and traveled the 700 kilometers with just a bag of clothes, my TV, and portfolio that had my resume and certificates I would need to get a job as a server out here in Winnipeg. It was very hard leaving my community to come to university. I didn't know my way around the city, and I had to learn how to use the transit system. And during my first university, I became, I remember having to take 3 different buses just to make it to class every day. Also, 3 days after arriving in Winnipeg, I found a job at Cherry Creek Cafe, where I would remain employed all throughout university. And it was also very tough during this time period because there was times I was homeless and was living a rough life by couch surfing with friends or family. Sometimes I didn't have enough money for food, but I always made sure I went to school, no matter what the circumstances were. In my final year of university, I had my daughter Nova during spring break and was back in class 4 days later. I completed my Bachelor of Arts degree in 2014, which is a monumental achievement because I'm the first in my family to graduate from university. After graduation, I was hired by the Center for Aboriginal Human Resource Development as an employment counselor, and I did well in my position. And so 5 months later, I was promoted to the Director of Employment Services. And in 2016, I welcomed my son, Leonardo. So being able to finish high school and earn my Bachelor of Arts degree has helped create a safer and more comfortable life for my children and me. And working as Manitoba Aerospace's recruitment specialist for the past 2 years has been rewarding. And I believe my exposure to planes landing near my home in Opaskwayak Cree Nation made a difference in my life. I've always had a passion for aerospace and aviation, and it has been my lifelong dream to become a pilot. So in order to pursue that dream, in 2020, I applied to the First Nations Technical Institute for entry into their flight program. Hundreds of Indigenous students apply every year, and I was one of 8 candidates selected for the 2020-2021 program during the pandemic. So while working my full-time job and looking after my 2 small children, I was able to finish ground school through Zoom this past spring. And this past June, I traveled to Tyendinaga, Ontario to complete the in-person practicum phase of the flight training. And this was one of the most difficult decisions I ever made in my entire life because I was going to be apart from my children, Nova and Leo, for 13 weeks. The flight training was very intense. Nothing about it was easy. And it entailed flying 7 days a week, up to 3 times a day, depending on the weather. So I was able to accomplish my childhood dream and pass my flight tests for my private pilot's license on September 3rd. Most pilots in training take at least a year to finish the flight hours needed to qualify for their flight test. My class and I did it in 3 months, and I have logged over 90 hours flight time. I'm also the first female Indigenous pilot from my community, Opaskwayak Cree Nation. Most recently named the Manitoba Ambassador for Elevate Aviation. And I'm the 2021 Post-Secondary Trailblazer recipient for the Nellie McClung Scholarship Foundation. Very thankful thankful and honored for these achievements. I failed 9 other times trying to get my pilot's license, and on my 10th try, I finally did it. I persevered and succeeded through a lot of hard situations, and I owe it all to my support system and to never giving up and asking for help when I needed it. I wanted to take this time to personally thank my family, friends, and my team at Manitoba Aerospace. My mom, Esther, my brother, Hank, my flight instructor, Jeff, and to Sarah and Jamie for making sure I didn't quit when I was at flight school. And I'd like to thank my team at Manitoba Aerospace, Wendell, Barb, Ellis, Sahar, Heidi, who have supported me all throughout my journey and dream of earning my pilot's license. So after completing my private pilot's license, I'm now working on my commercial pilot's license. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentations we have for the remainder of the afternoon.